I met Leah at a music festival neither of us planned to attend. I'd been dragged along by a coworker after a long week. She was there filling in for a friend who'd cancelled last minute. We ended up standing in the same patch of grass near the back, both more interested in the people than the band. She looked over during a lull between songs and said, "You look like you regret being here." I laughed, and we talked through the entire next set. She was quick, observant, with a sarcasm that could have come off cold if she wasn't smiling every other sentence. We ended up skipping the final act and walking the streets near the venue instead, passing food trucks, laughing over things we probably wouldn't remember the next day. But I remembered her. 2 days later, we met for coffee. 6 months later, we moved in together. Things just worked. We liked the same kind of silence. We fought clean. We prioritized the same things. She pushed me to ask for a promotion I'd been dragging my feet on. I helped her through the messy unraveling of a toxic job situation she'd stayed in too long. We built each other up. That's what it felt like we were building something. I proposed on a rooftop downtown, with a clumsy speech and a ring I'd carried around in my jacket for 2 weeks. She said yes without hesitation. The wedding came a year later, a garden ceremony with soft music, good food, and no over-the-top drama. She planned most of it, but she always checked in with me about the little things. Flowers, music, the seating chart. She wanted us both to feel like it was ours. We didn't have kids yet. We wanted to travel first, see some of the world while the timing was right. Leah had just finished a big project at her firm, and I'd banked some vacation time after a long client rollout. So we booked it, a 2-week honeymoon in a coastal resort town, something warm, beautiful, and far from everything we knew. She'd always wanted a mix of adventure and calm, beaches in the morning, city walks in the evening. I just wanted time with her, unplugged, undistracted. We left 2 days after the wedding. Everyone sent us off with champagne toasts and jokes about sunscreen and tropical drinks. We packed light. She brought 3 swimsuits and 2 books. I brought my camera and a list of places she'd casually mentioned wanting to visit. The flight was smooth. The weather was perfect. The hotel exceeded expectations. Our room had a balcony that overlooked the water, and we spent the first night there barefoot, holding drinks, talking like we had all the time in the world. For the first few days, everything felt like an extension of the wedding: laughter, quiet touches, shared meals, moments you think you'll carry with you forever. I remember lying next to her on the 3rd night, thinking, I did it. I married the woman I was meant to find. And I believed that. Completely. The first full day at the resort felt like waking up in someone else's life, one of those lives in travel ads with white sheets, slow mornings, and the ocean whispering just outside the window. Leah was already up when I rolled over, sitting on the balcony with her knees pulled to her chest and a cup of hotel coffee in her hands. Her hair was messy, and her skin looked gold in the early sun. She waved me over without saying anything. "Best morning ever," she said as I sat beside her. We didn't rush anything that day. We ordered room service, shared pineapple slices in bed, and didn't check our phones once. It felt like we had stepped off the timeline of normal life and into this protected little pocket of time, where nothing could touch us. We spent most of the afternoon on the beach. The sand was soft and hot, and the water felt like silk. Leah waded into her waist, splashing water at me when I hesitated on the shore. She was playful that way, always trying to draw people out of themselves. Later, we walked through the town, ducking in and out of shops. She had a way of moving through new places like she belonged there, asking the servers questions in broken local phrases, pointing out odd little souvenirs that made her laugh. She bought a handmade necklace with beads shaped like tiny citrus slices. Vacation Leah, she called it. That evening, we went to the resort's main restaurant. It was beautiful, open air, candlelit, with slow jazz playing softly from hidden speakers. She wore a dark green dress that made everyone in the room glance twice. I caught myself staring more than once. Dinner stretched into drinks, and then dessert, and then walking back to our room with her hand in mine. She leaned on my shoulder in the elevator, tired in the best way. "I'm glad we're here," she said as the doors opened. "It already feels like I never want to leave." I felt the same. The next few days passed in a blur of sunrises, ocean dips, nap-heavy afternoons, and new restaurants. We booked a catamaran tour, explored a local market, even took a dance class offered at the hotel that Leah insisted we try. I wasn't good, but she laughed the whole way through it. We talked about the future, kids, maybe two. A bigger place outside the city. She mentioned switching firms someday, doing more project-based work. I told her about a business idea I'd been sitting on, and she didn't brush it off like I feared. She asked real questions. She wanted to understand. It all felt like something we were writing together, a script that only made sense with both our names on it. I kept thinking, this is it. This is the kind of trip people talk about years later. This is where stories begin. By the middle of the week, we had slipped fully into the rhythm of island time. There were no alarms, no emails, no half-watched news feeds. Just the sound of waves in the background and the occasional knock at our door when breakfast arrived on a tray too big for the tiny table by the balcony. Leah said she hadn't felt this light in years. I believed her. There was something different in the way she moved, slower, like she was savoring everything. She walked barefoot everywhere. She started sketching again, filling a tiny notebook she bought in town with drawings of shells, rooftops, beach chairs. It had been a hobby she dropped years ago, but something about this place brought it back. I spent a lot of that day watching her without meaning to. The way she pulled her wet hair back into a messy knot. How she sat on a lounge chair with her knees up, sunglasses slipping down her nose, completely absorbed in whatever book she had open. Every once in a while, she'd look over at me and smile, not big, not performative, just a quiet acknowledgement that we were here together and nothing else mattered. That afternoon, we rented bikes from the hotel and rode along the coast. The breeze made it easy. We stopped halfway through the trail when we saw a roadside stand with mango juice and grilled corn. Leah bought 2 of each and sat with her legs dangling off a rock ledge, sipping through a straw and swatting at flies. "This is the happiest I've been in a long time," she said. I reached for her hand. "Me too." Later that night, the resort hosted a sunset dinner on the beach. Tables were lined up in the sand, lit by torches and soft string lights that swayed in the ocean breeze. We sat beside a couple from Spain who'd been married 20 years and still flirted like they were dating. Leah got a kick out of them. She said it gave her hope we'd still be holding hands across a table when we had wrinkles and reading glasses. After dinner, there was music, soft drums, local singers, a short set by a guitarist who looked like he lived his whole life barefoot. Leah pulled me into a slow dance without asking. Her cheek against mine, warm and steady. "This is what I imagined," she whispered. She kissed me then, slow, sweet, full of everything I thought the rest of our lives would be made of. We stayed out later than usual. By the time we made it back to our room, the hallways were empty and quiet, the hotel settling in for the night. We showered and crawled into bed, exhausted in the best kind of way. Her head on my chest, my hand resting lightly on her back. Everything felt whole. Everything felt easy. There were no questions. No doubts. Just the quiet joy of being exactly where you're meant to be. By the start of the second week, everything felt settled in the best way. The novelty of being somewhere new had worn off, but the comfort of being together deepened. We weren't rushing to see everything anymore. We were just being. Most mornings started the same, Leah waking before me, wrapping herself in one of the oversized resort robes, and disappearing onto the balcony with her notebook and a cup of coffee. She didn't talk much before 8 a.m., but I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. I liked hearing the scratch of her pencil on paper while I laid there half asleep, listening to the wind push against the curtains. We took a boat out to a small island one afternoon, a tour led by a local guide who showed us caves carved into the rocks by time and water. Leah swam farther than I did, diving in without hesitation. She always had that in her, a streak of boldness that I admired more than I said. On the way back, the boat hit a patch of rough water, and she grabbed my arm, laughing and screaming at the same time. Her laugh stayed with me, not polite or restrained, but open and full. It reminded me of the first time we danced together at that music festival, years ago, when she spun too fast and almost fell over, and just laughed instead of trying to play it cool. That night, we stayed in. We'd already eaten out so much, and room service sounded better than dressing up again. We ordered pasta and red wine and played cards on the floor. She beat me 3 games in a row and didn't let me forget it. When we got tired, we didn't talk much, just curled into each other and let the quiet do the work. That was one of the things I loved most about being with Leah. We didn't always need to fill the space. There was no pressure to perform. Just an ease that made everything feel lighter. I remember lying there, her breath warm against my neck, thinking, this is what it means to choose someone. Not because it's perfect, or dramatic, or made for TV. But because it's safe. Because it's quiet. Because when you're with the right person, even the stillness feels like movement. We'd talked about coming back here someday. Maybe for an anniversary. Maybe with kids, if we had them. Leah said she liked the idea of our future overlapping with our past, revisiting places that shaped us. We even took a photo together that evening, framed by the open balcony doors, sun setting behind us. I still have that photo saved. 2 smiles. No hesitation in our eyes. We had 3 days left in the trip when I felt it, a shift so small I almost talked myself out of noticing. It started that morning. Leah said she wanted to go for a massage at the hotel spa. She'd mentioned it a few times earlier in the week, even pointed out the menu in the lobby, so it didn't catch me off guard. She kissed me on the cheek, said she'd be back in an hour, maybe 2. You should go hang out by the pool, she said. Or get a drink. I'll meet you after. I told her I might go for a run instead, clear my head. She smiled and said, see? We're becoming one of those healthy couples already. I watched her walk off in her sandals and oversized sunglasses, her beach bag swinging against her hip. I didn't think anything of it at first. But when I came back from the run, she wasn't in the room. Still gone. It had been close to 3 hours. I assumed she just lingered, maybe booked a facial, too. She did that sometimes back home, adding things last minute. What felt off wasn't the delay. It was the silence. She usually texted, not out of obligation, just out of habit. Running late, or gonna grab a juice. But there was nothing. I checked my phone again, even refreshed the messaging app like it might update if I stared long enough. I opened the balcony door and sat outside. The sun was high now, and the sound of other people, laughing, moving, living their own vacations, filled the air. I told myself not to overthink it. She was relaxing. That's why we were here. When she walked in 20 minutes later, she looked flushed but composed. Sorry, she said, setting her bag down. It took longer than I thought. The hot stone massage ran over, and then I just kind of spaced out. She kissed the top of my head as she passed, went into the bathroom to wash her face. It wasn't a big deal. She didn't look panicked or guilty. She looked like someone who'd spent the morning being pampered. Still, something about her tone felt too ready. Like she knew I might ask. Like she'd already written the script. That night, we went to a small restaurant tucked away from the main street. It had hanging lanterns and one of those local menus written on a chalkboard. We had wine, shared 2 appetizers, and split a dessert Leah swore she'd never eat all of, and then did. She was warm again. Engaged. She teased me for ordering the same drink I'd had 3 nights in a row. She reached across the table and brushed something from my beard. And yet, There was still something in the back of my mind, a faint buzz I couldn't shake. It wasn't about mistrust. It was about misalignment. Like a song you love that skips for just a beat. You want to ignore it. But now you've heard it, and you can't pretend it's not there. I didn't bring it up. The longer spa visit. The slightly too smooth explanation. The quiet shift in her tone. I tucked it away, like we all do when something doesn't sit right but feels too small to challenge. The next day, she said she wanted to go into town on her own. I just want to wander a bit, she told me over breakfast. No schedule. No plans. Just see what I find. That wasn't unusual for Leah. She liked solo time. She could spend hours people-watching or flipping through old books in corner shops. And part of me liked that about her, she didn't need to be entertained. But still, something in me hesitated. Want me to come? I offered casually, just to see how she'd respond. She smiled too fast. No, I mean, you can if you want, but I was kind of hoping to just go slow, take my time. You should hit the beach or get a drink. Maybe that little whiskey bar you saw. I nodded. I didn't push. She kissed me quickly, said she'd be back around lunch, and left in that easy, effortless way she always had, sunglasses, tote bag, sandals, like she belonged everywhere. I sat on the balcony with a book, but I didn't really read. I kept checking the time. An hour passed. Then 2. Still nothing. Finally, around 1:45, she walked in holding a small shopping bag and a half-melted fruit cup. Sorry, she said. I lost track of time. Got caught up talking to a local artist in a studio near the square. Look, I bought one of his prints. She pulled it out. It was a watercolor, a cluster of rooftops and bougainvillea vines. Pretty. Harmless. I smiled and said it was beautiful. She seemed relaxed. At ease. But when I went to throw out the fruit cup later, I noticed the receipt inside the bag. It was for a cafe, dated nearly 2 hours earlier. And it wasn't in the square. It was near the hotel. A 5-minute walk, max. Not a lie, exactly. Just, off. I stood there for a moment, holding the paper, not knowing why it made me feel like I'd swallowed something bitter. That night, she was affectionate again. Talkative. She showed me photos she'd taken, let me scroll through her camera roll. There were pictures of alleyways, fruit stands, 2 photos of the painting. 1 selfie with a palm tree. But nothing else. Nothing of the artist. Nothing of the cafe. Nothing of what filled the missing 2 hours. It was subtle. Quiet. A space you couldn't quite name but couldn't unsee either. I told myself I was being paranoid. I reminded myself this was a vacation, we were supposed to relax, not dissect. Still, I found myself watching more closely. Where her eyes went when we walked through the lobby. What she packed in her tote bag. When she smiled without telling me why. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was the feeling that someone had stepped slightly out of frame, and you were the only one who noticed. We only had 2 days left. The end of the trip was creeping up on us, but instead of feeling like I wanted to stretch the time out, I caught myself glancing at the clock more often. Watching the hours pass like I was waiting for something I couldn't name. Leah was still affectionate. Still smiling. Still herself in all the ways that mattered, at least on the outside. But something between us had changed. Not obviously. Not with a fight or a silence or a slammed door. It was more like trying to hold on to fog. Like every time I reached for the feeling we'd had at the start of the week, that closeness, that ease, my hand came back empty. We spent that morning by the pool. She laid on a lounger with her sun hat pulled low and a novel propped against her knees. I read half a chapter of something I couldn't focus on and kept glancing over at her instead. She wasn't reading. Not really. Her eyes weren't scanning the page. Every so often, she'd glance toward the bar. And every time she did, her face changed. Subtly. Softly. Like she was waiting for something. Or someone. I looked too, but saw nothing out of the ordinary, just a bartender wiping down glasses, guests in swimwear chatting at tables, staff weaving between them with trays. Still, something pulled at the edge of my brain. A static I couldn't quite tune out. Later, when I got up to get us drinks, I told myself I wasn't checking, just curious. But as I stood at the bar waiting for the bartender to mix her usual, I noticed a younger guy in hotel uniform coming around from behind a door marked, "Staff Only." He moved quickly. Confident, but casual. He looked over my shoulder, then immediately looked down. I turned slightly. Leah was watching. When our eyes met, she gave me a small wave, like she hadn't noticed I'd been gone long. I brought the drinks back and sat down next to her. "You okay?" I asked, handing her the glass. "Yeah," she said brightly. "Why?" I shrugged. "Just seemed like your head was somewhere else." She smiled, took a sip. "Just thinking about how fast this trip flew by." She leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. Light. Almost rehearsed. That night, I barely slept. She was curled beside me like always, breathing evenly, hair falling across my chest. But I stared at the ceiling, counting the number of things I hadn't said out loud. The receipt. The timing. The glances. The gaps in her stories. I didn't have proof. But I had a gut full of unanswered questions and a voice in the back of my mind that wouldn't shut up. This wasn't what it was before. Not anymore. And whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was starting to dread what I might find if I pushed even one step further. Our last full day was supposed to be slow. We'd made no plans, intentionally. Leah said she wanted to relax, soak up the final bit of sun, maybe grab dinner at the beachside grill we hadn't tried yet. I told her I was going to head into town for a little while, browse for something to bring back for Mason, our nephew, a small carved boat or a silly t-shirt. She didn't offer to come with me. Just kissed me quickly and said, "Take your time." I did. I wandered the market. Picked up a few souvenirs. Bought a soda and sat in the square, watching locals argue about something with laughter in their voices. I should have felt peaceful. But I didn't. That quiet pull, the static that had been growing all week, was louder now. Less like a whisper, more like a hum in my chest I couldn't drown out. On the walk back, I decided to stop by the concierge. I'd left a pair of shoes in the gym locker room earlier that week and thought maybe someone had turned them in. They hadn't. No surprise. But as I was heading through the side hallway that looped behind the spa, I noticed a familiar bag. A cream tote with a blue strap. Leah's. Propped against the wall just outside a private door. Something in me paused. There was a soft sound behind the door. Music. Laughter. I shouldn't have stopped. But I did. I stepped closer, thinking maybe she was getting another massage. That's what I wanted to believe. A final pamper session before we flew home. Nothing more. But the door wasn't latched. It was cracked open, just enough to see inside. And there she was. Leah. Not in a robe. Not in spa clothes. Sitting across a small table from the same hotel employee I'd seen before, the one with the too casual confidence, the one who'd glanced away from me at the bar. He was laughing. She was smiling. Their hands were touching. She reached up and ran her fingers through his hair, then leaned in and kissed him, not quick, not unsure. Like they'd done it before. Like they weren't afraid. I didn't walk in. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, staring through a 2-inch gap into a world I wasn't supposed to see. A version of her I didn't know. A moment that shattered 100 others we'd shared just days before. When I finally turned and walked away, my hands were numb. My mouth dry. My heart thudding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. She didn't see me. Not then. But she would. Because the next time we'd speak, it wouldn't be as husband and wife anymore. It would be as the woman who destroyed our marriage. And the man who was about to take everything back. I didn't go back to the room right away. I walked. Down through the pool area, past the same palm trees we'd sat beneath, past the bar where I'd toasted to us on night 2. My legs moved on their own. My mind was blank. Not angry yet, just suspended. Like my brain hadn't caught up to what my eyes had just seen. When I finally opened our hotel door, she was there. In a towel, fresh from a shower, towel wrapping her hair, humming. She looked at me and smiled. "Hey, you're back. I was gonna text you, but I figured you'd beat me to it." I stared at her. Not saying anything. She tilted her head. "Everything okay?" I walked to the closet. Pulled out my suitcase. Set it on the bed. That's when she started to frown. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. I unzipped it. Grabbed the duffel where I kept the travel documents. Sat down at the small desk by the window and opened my laptop. "Can you please talk to me?" I looked at her, finally. And my voice came out cold, flat. "You kissed him." Her mouth opened. Closed. "What?" "You kissed the hotel employee. The same one I saw you watching at the bar." "I saw you through the door, Leah." Color drained from her face. "I wasn't spying," I added. "I was passing by the spa, and your bag was there." The door was open. I looked. And there you were. She didn't say anything. I stood. "So here's how this is going to go. You're checking out. Tonight. I've already booked you a separate room. You'll find the confirmation in your email. You'll stay there until your flight." "You're serious?" "I've never been more." Her voice cracked. "Can we please talk about this?" "We are. Right now. You had the choice to talk earlier. You made a different one. I made a mistake. You made a pattern." That shut her up. Her shoulders dropped. She turned away, like she couldn't bear to look at me. I kept going. "You'll pack your things and leave this room within the hour. I'll stay here and enjoy the rest of the trip, without the person who made a joke of our marriage. And when we get home," she whispered. I stared at her. "We won't be going home together." She blinked. "I'll be filing for divorce. First thing. You can fight it if you want, but I already have everything I need. Photos. Hotel logs. The name of the employee. Don't make this messier than it needs to be. Please," she said, her voice small. "Don't do this here. You already did." She didn't argue after that. She packed in silence. Grabbed her bag. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just walked out like someone leaving a crime scene, hoping no one else had noticed. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled for the first time in an hour. Then I walked to the minibar, poured myself a whiskey, opened the balcony doors to the sound of waves, and sat in the fading light alone. Finally, alone. The next morning, the sky was clean and pale, the kind of blue that makes you forget anything bad ever happened. The kind of sky made for honeymoons. Leah was gone. Her name no longer appeared on the digital room key. Her toothbrush was missing. The only thing she'd left behind was a hair tie on the bathroom counter. I dropped it in the trash. I spent the rest of the morning the way I wanted to, no pretense, no fake smiles. I got coffee alone, took the good seat by the pool, and read a book I'd packed and never touched. The staff greeted me like nothing had happened. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they'd seen worse. Maybe they saw everything. By noon, I went down to the front desk and asked for a copy of the incident logs. They hesitated, until I mentioned I'd be filing a formal complaint with corporate. The concierge printed them in silence. There it was in black and white. Her room visits. His breaks. The overlapping hours. The evidence I hadn't even known I was collecting. It didn't feel good. It felt final. I sent the files to my personal email. I forwarded the hotel footage request form to my lawyer's office. I didn't write a rage-filled caption. I didn't make a social media post. That wasn't the revenge. The revenge was in the silence. In the clean paper trail. In the knowledge that she wouldn't just lose a husband, but a name, a reputation, and every ounce of the quiet trust one once gave her without question. I extended my stay by 2 days. Why not? The room was paid for. The view was still mine. The ocean didn't know what she'd done. I swam every morning. I took long walks through the coastal trails. I ate slowly, with wine. I let the sun touch my face without guilt. One night, I wrote a letter. Not to her. To myself. I listed everything I knew about love. What I'd learned from being hers. What I wouldn't allow again. What I deserved. What I gave, fully, recklessly, and would never regret, even if she buried it in the arms of someone she'd never introduced to her family. I didn't write it for closure. I wrote it because I wanted to remember that I tried. Really tried. And that's something she'll never erase, not with a lie, not with a secret, not with a touch shared behind a half-closed door. When I finally boarded the plane home, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me worth seeing. Coming home was colder than I expected. Not the weather, the air. The stillness. The way the house felt hollow, even though everything was exactly where we left it. Her shoes were still by the door. Her mug was on the drying rack. Her scarf hung from the back of the chair like she'd just stepped out for a minute. But she hadn't just stepped out. She'd been stepping out for days. And I wasn't going to let her step back in. The day after I landed, I called the lawyer. The paperwork was already prepped. All it needed was a signature. I signed it without pausing. Infidelity, premeditated, during legally recognized honeymoon. He nodded grimly and said, "That'll hold." I sent her the notice through a formal channel. No note. No call. Just the facts, divorce initiated. You'll be contacted. This is not a discussion. She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was a single line. Can we at least talk? I left it unread. She'd done enough talking behind closed doors. The rest came fast. She moved her things out a week later, during hours I arranged through her sister. I stayed gone. I didn't want to see her walk through our space like it still belonged to her. When I came back, everything was neater than expected. Nothing broken. No dramatics. Just, gone. Good. I told mutual friends quietly. Only the ones who asked. I didn't drag her name through the dirt, not because I didn't have the right, but because I didn't want to carry her mess any further than I had to. Some of them stopped replying after they found out. Others reached out just to say, "Whatever you need." I didn't need much. I canceled the anniversary dinner reservation we'd made in advance. I deleted the shared calendar. I took her name off everything: bank accounts, emergency contacts, the folder labeled "future trips." I didn't replace those things with rage. I replaced them with space. And in that space, I started living like the man I was before I thought loyalty was enough. I got back to work. Picked up new projects. Filled the days with steady tasks. When the nights came, they were quieter than I was used to, but they were honest. Sometimes I missed her, or at least, I missed the version of her that was real to me. But even that passed. Because eventually, I stopped remembering the trip as our honeymoon. And started remembering it for what it was. The last time I ever mistook comfort for connection. The last time I let someone sit beside me and lie with their eyes. The last time I gave someone everything and got a stranger in return. Now. I sleep well. I eat slow. I don't ask where people go when they say, "I'll be back soon." Because if I've learned anything, it's this. Let them go. If they're meant to stay, they won't need a door to do it. And if they're not, they'll lock themselves out eventually.